Hi, I'm Rita. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, Life Worth Reading. Today, I am telling you guys that I'm participating in yet another readathon. This time, it'll be a year-long readathon where I have to read a lot of books in order to make it happen. So in a year from now, if I do a video update and I tell you that this didn't go down well at all, please feel free to ignore that this ever happened, honestly. But yeah, I'm participating in the R Fantasy subreddit, and this is a year-long readathon that will be taking place. There are several prompts. There's a bingo board that I'll put here. And I am really excited about this, but I'm also kind of terrified about the amount of books that need to get done until the next year. I had honestly never heard of this readathon before, so I'm just collecting a lot of information in a short amount of time. I didn't really know that this was a thing, but I kind of got FOMO watching everyone else's videos, so I thought that I would participate as well. This video will just be like an introduction where I'll be showing you in my bingo card every single book that I'll be reading for each prompt. And so if you want to know more information, I'll leave in the description down the links to everything, because I certainly don't know enough to be telling you. Okay, so without further ado, let's just get started. For the first prompt, short and sweet, we have first book in a series, and I picked a book from my physical TBR. Of course, I tried to pick as many books as I could, though I actually don't own a lot of fantasy. And that is The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Harden. This is a trilogy, the Winter Witch trilogy, is that the name? I don't know. This is a book that I picked up last year on a whim. I've heard really good things about this trilogy overall. I know it's a fantasy like set in Russia. It has this like really folklore and cozy, cold vibes. And I don't know, I just thought that this would be a good try. It's not obscenely long, which I love. I actually don't know if I'll continue on with the series. We'll just have to see. But for this first prompt, I thought it would be a good pick. Then we have an illiterate title, so every or nearly every word in the title should start with the same letter. And for this one, I picked The Adventures of Amina Al-Zarafi. This is a book that I also had on my 2024 to read list, so it just mixes quite well. And this is one of the only fantasy books that I could come up that had an illiterate title. I looked everywhere and I just couldn't find anything else, so this just had to be it. I know it's like a pirate heist story with an older protagonist. It sounds like something that I would really enjoy. I still need to purchase it or read it on my Kindle, but because I don't own it yet. But I thought that this would be a great try, and it was actually one of the only ones that I could find that had such conditions. Then we have a book that is set underground for a part of it, and for this one I'm putting The Sun Sky by N.K. Jemisin. This is the conclusion to the 5th season trilogy, which I am currently not remembering like the series name, but this is the conclusion, and I am assuming that some part of it is set underground because in the previous 2 books, especially in the middle one, it was set underground for a great part of it, and I'm assuming that it continues to be so because I couldn't find any other book that would fit these prompts, and I just really want to finish this trilogy. I love the first 2 books. The first one was better in my opinion, but I still really love the first 2, and I really want to conclude this trilogy, so I thought that I would prioritize it for this year. Next up we have Criminals, like as a main character. It can be a heist, and for this one I thought that I would read A Tempest of Tea, and this is a new release that has just come out. I've never tried a book by this author. This is the same author of We Hunt a Flame, I think that's it, and I've never tried one of their books before, but this one sounds great. I've been hearing great things about it. It's this tea room that also has vampires. Is that it? I don't think that's it, but it's something like that. It's something like that. And it just sounded really interesting. I want to try one of the books by this author. It's a standalone, and I think that this would be like a perfect to just gauge my experience with this author and see if I enjoy it enough to read her other books. Then we have books with dreams as a theme, and I picked Strange a Dreamer by Laini Taylor because here in the back it says the dream chooses a dreamer, so you just know that there's going to be a lot of dreams. And it's about this man who dreams a city that he thinks doesn't exist, but it actually does. And it's the lost city of Weep. It's a duology. I absolutely love this cover. And I was so excited to finally purchase this book. I think it's gorgeous. I don't have the sequel yet, but that could be solved. That could be easily solved. And I'm just really excited to try this out. I know that it's a lot of people's like favorite book. So that's it. Good enough for me. That's good enough for me. Next up we have Entitled Animals, which is an animal's name on the cover. And for this one I chose When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain by Niveau. I haven't read The Empress of Salt and Fortune, but I really want to. And the first book in the series doesn't have the animal, so I'm going to read the first one, and then we're going to read When the Tiger Came Down the Mountain, and it'll just be a grand old time, okay? It'll just be a grand old time, and I hope that it's okay that I picked the second book in a series that I haven't started. I think it will be okay. And I know this is about a character who finds out a lot of stories and just like goes through her village trying to gather these folkloric tales from her neighboring animals, and it sounds really good. It sounds like something that I would enjoy, and I'm hopeful that I will. Then we have a book with a bard, which is like a storyteller, a poet, a musician. And this one I went on Google, so I have no idea if this is true. This happens with a couple of prompts, so I'm going to be asking you if you know if this is true or not. But I picked A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross. I know this is a very popular fantasy duology as well. I have no idea what it's about, but it said that it had a bard. One of the characters is maybe a storyteller, a musician, a poet. I have no idea if this is true or not. Please let me know if it is. I'm hopeful that it is because I didn't really want to switch out books. But if it's not, I will have to, because I just didn't know in my head, like, how am I supposed to know if our main character is like a poet or a storyteller? I just don't know. So I went on Google for this one, and maybe that'll backfire, but hopefully it won't, and I'll be reading and enjoying this book. Next up we have a book with a prologue or an epilogue, and for this one I picked The Once and Future Witches by Alexi Harrow. This is a witchy story about 3 sisters in the suffragette movement, and it does have an epilogue. I did check. It does have an epilogue. It's a book that I've been wanting to read for a long time. It's in my self-destructing books for 2024, and so yeah, I just have to pick books that are my physical TBR for a long time, and this was one of them. Then we have self-published or indie published, and this might also be a mistake, but I believe that The Sword of Kaigen was indie published or self-published at first. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. I beg of you, but I just didn't. I don't follow a lot of like self-published or indie published books. I don't go on that scene a lot, so I just didn't know about other fantasy books that were indie published or self-published, so please help me out. I think that The Sword of Kaigen was originally like self-published or like published by a small indie publisher, but please help me out. I have no idea what this book is about. I just know that it has one of the highest ratings I've ever seen for a fantasy book. I know that a lot of my friends have read and loved it. A lot of people that I love and trust have loved it, so I think it's just time to read this one, and hopefully it'll be a self-published or indie published book that I can support as well. Then we have a romantasy. I'm not a romantasy girly. I'm not. But the one that I picked, this is truly Kayla's fault, only Kayla's fault, and that is The Throne of the Fallen by Karen Maniscalco. I read Kingdom of the Wicked and I didn't hate it, so I'm hopeful that this will be a good time. She really liked it, which is unusual for her, so I'm hoping that I'll really like it, because that would be unusual for me as well. I know it's about this princess, and they're like these princes of hell, or like sins, and it kind of reminded me a lot of A Kingdom of the Wicked, because she had a lot of like the sin as men thing going on. But I don't know, I'm just hopeful that I'll enjoy it, and if I don't, it is 100% Kayla's fault. Next up we have A Dark Academia. For this one I'm picking Vita Nostra by Marina and Sergei Diachenko. I bought this book a long time ago. I still haven't read it, and it's just shameful. It's just a shameful thing that I'm doing, that I haven't read this book yet. it is not quite long, but the print is really small. Like the font is really tiny, so that kind of like freaks me out a little bit. But I'm hopeful that I'll enjoy it. I know it's a dark academia. That's honestly kind of all that I know about it. It's about this academy or school where it's very dangerous and some of the students die sometimes. I think that that's it. So it sounds like it'll fit the theme just right, and I really need to read this book because it has been on my shelves for too long. Then next up we have a multiple POV, and I'm sure that there are a lot of books with multiple POV, but I just couldn't think of any besides this one, and that is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhurst. Now technically, I will say that there is a rule that only one of the books should be a reread. This is the one, because I've read Black Sun, but I haven't continued on. I no longer remember it. It's been like 3 years since I've read it. I desperately need to reread it, and I know that it has multiple POV. It was such an interesting story, like set in pre-Columbian America. It was such a good time, and I just want to continue on with the series really badly. Then for published in 2024, I'm picking The Familiar by Leigh Bardugo. This is a book that I've been really excited to get to. It just published a few weeks ago, maybe less. I still haven't bought it, but I don't know, I just feel like this would be a good time because it's a historical fantasy, and I just love historical fantasy so much. I love historical fiction in general, but when it mixes in fantasy elements, that's like what I love the most. It's set in the golden age in Spain during the conquistador era, and I don't know, it just sounds really good. People have been really enjoying it, and it's a standalone by Leigh Bardugo, which we love to see, and I'm glad that she's branching out in terms of what she's writing, because I feel like she's so talented, and this just feels like a book that I'll really enjoy because I love historical fantasy. Then we have a book that I also had to Google because it says book with a disabled character, and I tried really hard to search for fantasy books with disabled characters. Some books I had already read, so I couldn't pick, and I saw that and Kindness of Ghosts by Riverman Solomon had a disabled character. Please let me know if this is true, if you've read the books. If not, give me some recommendations. I'll swap something out. But I love River Solomon as a writer. I think they're so talented, and I just didn't like, I searched fantasy books with disabled characters and this showed up, but I don't know if it's like necessarily true or if this character is relevant. So if it's not, give me some recommendations, some books with disabled characters that you think I'll enjoy. But for now, we have An Unkindness of Ghosts by River Solomon. Next up, for a book published in the 1990s, we have Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler. I really want to try Octavia E. Butler this year. She's one of my most exciting authors. It's like one of those authors that I really want to get to because I feel like her books are just so iconic, and what she has done as a woman of color in the science fiction genre is mind-blowing. So I really want to read this one, and it was published in the 90s. I checked because I wanted to read Kindred, but then I found out that it was published in like the late 70s. But Parable of the Sower was released in 1990, and I'm just so excited to get to it because I feel like her type of science fiction with historicalness to it, I feel like it'll be just right for me. Then we have like orcs, trolls, goblins. I don't read books with that, so I just picked the most simple one that everyone loves and adores, and that is Legends and Lattes. I know this has trolls in it. They have a cute coffee shop, and everyone loves this book. Why wouldn't I love it? I hope that I love it. And it's just like the one that I could think of because I do not, as a rule, read a lot of books with goblins and trolls or orcs, even though I do read fantasy, but that's just not the types of creatures that usually show up in the books that I read. But I know this is about trolls, and it's a cozy fantasy, and I'm really down to finally get to it. And also then we have a space opera, which is something that I don't like, something that I don't read. I don't love books set in space like that, but I just figured that I would read something that's very popular, and so I chose Gideon the Ninth. And I know that this is a space opera set in Ninth House planet. I don't know, it's kind of scary because a lot of people say that it's very confusing, and the trilogy overall is very confusing. So I'm really scared to get into it, but I know it's really gay, so that's exciting. And I don't know. I just don't love a space opera, and I didn't really want to commit to like a full branched out like intense sci-fi space opera. So I just thought that this would be like a good halfway point between something that I actually might enjoy and what the prompt requires of me. Then we just have like kind of a free space of an author of color, so I picked a sequel that I'm really excited to get to, and that is Bloodmark by Tracy Deonn. I am so excited to get to this book. I loved Legend Board when I first read it. I was a little bit confused with some of the Arthur Roundtable legend stuff, but I have to reread it first, but I'm not putting it on the board, but I have to reread it for sure. But Bloodmarked, it has released last year. The final book is coming, and I'm just here still on book 1. It just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like it's right. I just have to continue on with the series because I did really enjoy it, and I just thought it was a great book, honestly. So I'm really excited to get to the sequel, and I love the added pressure of doing so in a challenge, and we love failing at a challenge. We do. Then we have a survival story, and for this I picked Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. I bought this book because I'm so hopeful that I'll love it. I am so hopeful that I love it. Everyone and their mothers has loved this book, even people that aren't into science fiction like me. Like, I am not a science fiction girly, and still people have loved it. So clearly this is something that I love. I know it's about a man who wakes up in space alone and has to figure out what happened. It's a mystery. It's also a survival story. It's also set in space. I don't know. I feel like this might be a good opportunity for me to dive more into sci-fi and see how I truly feel about it. Okay, we are in the home stretch, people. Then we have a book for the cover, and that is Annihilation by Jeff Vandermeer. This is also a trilogy. I don't know if I'll continue on. We'll see how I feel about this one. I know it's about like Area X, but I just don't know a lot about it. But I don't know. I just love the cover. It was really compelling to me when I saw it. Like, I just had to buy it because something about the colors and the design really spoke to me. And it is sci-fi, so this is a book that I definitely want to get to this year. It's quite short, which we love to see. We really do. It's less than 200 pages. Like, amazing, incredible. And I don't know, I just feel like I love the cover, and I had to choose it because it didn't really fit with any other prompt that I was looking at. Then we have a book set in a small town, and I have a final book in a quartet as well. We have The Raven King by Maggie Stiefvater. This is the conclusion to the Raven cycle, and this is set in a small town in Virginia. I will have to reread the whole series again. Like, it's been 3 years. I no longer remember what this was about, but I did enjoy it at the time. It was not like my favorite thing in the world, but I really want to just finish this quartet and just finish a series and get it over with and just figure out how this book ends. I've heard not great things about how it ends, but we'll just have to see. And this is also one of the only books I could think about that had like a small town setting, because usually fantasy books don't have a small town setting. So this is one of the only ones that I actually could remember. So that's why this is here. Next up, we have 5 short stories, and I picked Hazelation by Ted Chiang. I just recently picked up this book from my library before I even knew that I was doing this challenge. And these are short stories, like sci-fi short stories, and I know that one of them, I don't know if it was from this book specifically, but I know one of Ted Chiang's short stories was actually picked up and adapted into the movie Arrival, which I saw recently and really enjoyed. And I just think that this is a book that has been highly acclaimed. I love a short story collection. I also want to like dive more into sci-fi. As you can see, I have a few picks here to really solidify if I enjoy it or not, and I just thought that this would be a great try. And yeah, it's from my library, and I'm excited to get to it and see which one is my favorite short story. Then we have something called Eldritch Creatures, which in the subreddit they explained as a strange creature, but it can also be like a god or something. And so for this one, I picked The Dragon Republic by Arf Kwang, a series that I'm also trying to continue. And Mafalda has very kindly let me borrow this book because I need to get on with the series. This is book 2 in the Poppy War trilogy, and this has gods in it. So that's good enough for me. That's good enough for me. It's very chunky, so we'll have to see how this one goes. It's 650 pages, but we'll get to it without no fear. No fear in us. We will get to this book and we will love it because there are gods in it. Okay, only 2 books left. The second to last one is book with reference materials, which can be a map or anything like that. And The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson does have maps and reference materials, so that's also good enough for me. This is the first in the Mistborn trilogy. My friend Bia let me borrow her entire trilogy and we're going to buddy read it this summer, hopefully. And I'm just very excited to get to this. I'm very anxious to start the Cosmere because I just don't know how I feel about Brandon Sanderson's writing. I don't know. I know it's about like metals and people who ingest metals and have different powers. I know it's set in a world where the Dark Lord won. I just don't know a lot about it, so we'll just have to figure out how this one goes. And finally, we have book club or read along, and this is where I'm going to cheat. Supposedly you could have only 1 author per prompt, but I'm choosing a repeat book, and that is The City of Brass by Shannon Chakraborty, which is the author of The Adventures of Amin al-Zarafi. This is one of the only read-alongs in book clubs that I am going to be doing this year that's actually for fantasy, because I usually do like general fiction book clubs, and this is for Katie's reading book club. They're going to do like a read-along of the series starting in May or June, and I just really want to try this book. It's set in Egypt. It's like jinn, and I just thought it would be really exciting. I don't know. This is one of the only ones that I could remember. But if you have a fantasy book club, let me know which book you're reading and maybe I can swap it out so I don't cheat. Also, my battery is dying, so I'll probably need to do the outro after it charges, so apologies if it'll look different. Friends, I am back, and here we have the 9 books from my physical TBR plus 1 from my library that I'll be reading for the R Fantasy subreddit Bingo 2024 readathon, and I am just so excited about all of these. I am very hopeful that I'll make it, and let me know if you're participating as well. I would love to know. I've seen a lot of people participating lately, but just let me know if you're thinking about it too. I feel like this is going to be a really fun challenge, and the fact that it's a year-long readathon really helps me with my anxiety and really helps me to know that I still have a year to read all of these books, and hopefully I will be making it come true. Let me know any other recommendations that you think would fit better for some prompts in the comments down below. Any books that you love that you think would fit with the theme. And I think that's all that I gotta say. So if you did enjoy this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content, and I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have a nice day, and always remember that life is worth reading.